Welcome to the Third Tuesday Conversation, the ELCA Youth Ministry Network's monthly podcast. Our goal is to engage in conversations affirming that youth ministry looks a million different ways, in a million different places, and with a million different experiences. Hey, everybody, this is Jessica Noonan coming to you from the Houston area.
Hey, Veronica coming from Philadelphia.
And Alex from Marquette, Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. It's May. I feel like when I think of May, I think of graduation sometimes, especially with some of my college students that I work with. But more than that, I think of confirmation. I was definitely confirmed in May, as I know a lot of people that I've confirmed have been in a service in May. And I wonder if we can talk about that a little bit today, what maybe the purpose of confirmation is, and maybe if there's a confirmation experience that you've been a part of that you remember that was touching. I can definitely tell you, I remember my confirmation. It was a separate service on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a bunch of students. We went to school at a Lutheran school, so we had confirmation as part of our classes. You had science and history, and you had confirmation class with the pastor. And then that Sunday, we gathered together. Plus, we had the students who were not part of our school. They were part of public school. They came over. We all met together. I knew some of them from little back and forth through the years. And we all got confirmed. They asked each of us one question. And when we were finished with that, then one by one, we went up. We had a verse that was given to us. It happened to be the same verse as my cousins the year prior from a completely different church. That was kind of cool. I don't remember it. And then my parents put their hands on me, and my mom cried a ton, and I was confirmed. And then we were expected to wear a white robe the next Sunday, so people knew that we were taking communion for the first time, because my confirmation was also the way that you were able to take communion, because I grew up in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So that's kind of like what I think of personally. And then obviously as a pastor, I've done some different confirmations where they've been about the similar experience, a little less about questions and a little bit more about profession. Tell me a story of your faith. Let us read an excerpt of your faith. But that same kind of blessing you and inviting you into the church as a new member, affirming your baptism and things like that. But what comes to mind for y'all when you think of confirmation?
Well, I didn't get baptized until I was 15, so I didn't go through confirmation. But two of my kids have been confirmed, and my third is in confirmation. But what actually comes to mind, well, funny, my son, who's just turned 21, by the way, friends, when he got confirmed, they had the students, and I'm trying to remember if we do this every year, but it's kind of a blur, but all of the confirmation students sat on the far left side of the sanctuary, right? And in their own little group. And I just remember looking over, and my son is completely like slouched down in his seat with like the grumpiest look on his face. Like, you know, he was being tortured to be there for his confirmation. But no, actually what came to mind is this last Thursday, our good friends of my middle daughter, she just got confirmed. She's a senior in high school in the Roman Catholic Church. So confirmation is in high school at this church, and they started going back to church a little later on in life. And anyways, there were 120 high school students getting confirmed. This sanctuary was packed. In their tradition, the local bishop comes and confirms them. So he preached, and he was a riot. And it was quite the thing, but he asked them some questions, like in his sermon. He's like, okay, who can tell me why they picked their sponsor? Because their sponsor sat with them during the whole service, which was really cool. And, you know, just asking of different questions. But the thing that was so interesting was that they all picked a name.
Yeah.
They get a new name when they're confirmed. And so he asked a couple of them why they chose that name. And it was just a really, you know, just different from what, we're used to in the Lutheran world. But it was really special. Yeah, it was a special service.
The Catholics. What about you, Veronica? What are you thinking?
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. It just started raining here, you know. April showers bring May showers. So, well, I was confirmed in a traditional sense, I suppose. In my church, I was a part of a year-long program. It was very much like Sunday school amped up, okay? But I remember first communion when I did all those things, like when you learn the Apostles' Creed and you learn about the catechism, the small catechism, but it was just really memorization at that time. Confirmation was kind of like, why? Where did it come from? The history of the Apostles' Creed. Who wrote it? Why do we say it? And so for me, and I'm naturally inquisitive, I wanted to know all that stuff. Maybe the people that were with me did not, but I did. I thought it was interesting. And sorry, the wind is coming. It's the spirit. But my confirmation, I remember I was in the white robe, and we usually do our confirmations in October, like for Reformation Sunday. We would do our confirmation on that day because I guess that would be like the end of it. Not the end as far as the end of the school year, but you have learned, you know, and you're still coming to church, I guess, during your senior year. So that was a little different because it was at the beginning of the school year, senior year, that we would be confirmed. But I had really good memories of confirmation. And when all the different generations and classes of youth are confirmed, I have to sit in the back because I start crying. All the youth that I've taken on trips and kids I taught in Sunday school and little kids that show me their, you know, candle they made in arts and crafts, and they're just, now they're grown. And so I get really teary, but it's out of pride and thanksgiving that they made it, you know, they made it to adulthood, and that they actually still want to be a part of a church that confesses and that confirms their faith as young adults. So I've seen all different parts of it. So yeah, that's my experience.
No, that's really great. And I think that's the key beauty. Like, if I could say what's the beautiful part of confirmation, I think that's what we want to hear every time, right? The child that has been in the system, learning and growing, getting stronger and getting older and getting wiser. And then you get to this point and you go, this is your faith now. And then you go, and now look at all the opportunities. And then you go, hey, how many of those confirmation students did you see 4 years later? And for me, the downfall is a few and a heck of a lot on Christmas and Easter. And so then I have to ask that question, what are we doing? And it's such a big question because I know there's programs that are great and they got amazing youth programs and things like this. But I also know so many people will tell me all the time, and I see it in my own churches, what is confirmation doing except graduating our kids out of faith? Hey, thank you. Or, you know, we had a few at my first call where my mom and dad said I had to go. And when I'm done with this, I don't have to go anymore. And that's what they told me. And so then you're going like, what kind of deal are we cutting with some of our children and students to say, and now you got to go into this space. So I wonder, what is the real purpose of confirmation? How has it been told to you, sold to you? How have you told or given that information to students? And also I think to parents and families, because families have to believe in it. It can't just be something where the kids go, oh man, confirmation. And some kids do. We have amazing stories of kids who go, I want to be confirmed. I also have a pretty good amount of stories. My parents told me I had to be there. So what kind of comes to y'all's mind when you say, like, what's the purpose? What's the selling point And are we selling it correctly?
That's a loaded question, but oh yeah.
Remember to say your name and who you work for before you answer this.
It's a loaded question. Yes. So, yeah, gosh. I mean, it's supposed to be, right, an affirmation of your baptism, right? There's the assumption that you were baptized when you were a baby, but that's not true for everybody.
Right.
And that, right, this is the point where you're like, wow, now I'm going to maybe take my faith and my responsibility of my faith more seriously. And it's become a sacred cow. You know, it's like the thing you have to do. But then after that, okay, you checked it off, you're done, which is such BS. It's such a bad attitude to have. But I mean, I think we also are guilty in the church as church professionals for feeding into that, right? Of creating programs and confirmation ministry that reflects like you've checked it off the box. And sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox here. So when I was writing notes for this, I put, why is it so lame? I put this in X like big. Yeah, Alex can't handle it. How are we really equipping our young people to live out their faith in the world? Because I don't think most confirmation programs or ministries are doing that, that are really gifting that to not only the students, but also to the parents, right? And the other adults who are walking alongside these kids. All right.
I think a part of the challenge is just the society that we live in. It has changed a lot. And I'm what they call exennial, I guess.
What? Explain yourself.
It's a Generation X and millennial. Okay. It's a mix. Exennial. And I would say, since I was young, all these ideas of what is a youth group, what is youth ministry, what is confirmation, what is Sunday school, it is having a chokehold on a lot of people my age because it doesn't match what we want it to match. So my niece is 18. She just turned 18 on Friday. She is a senior in high school. She graduated early, but she just hasn't walked and got her, certificate and all that. We never did confirmation for her in her age group. And we can't even blame COVID. That was 5 years ago. The way that society operates now, it's almost like the parents, they would have to really be invested in seeing that happen. And I'm just not seeing it. And I'm talking about my own family.
Right.
I just don't see, even from the parents, the want to bring them out for 2 hours, 4 hours over these years of study. The last few that we have confirmed did maybe a day-long thing. And I don't even know how much they learned in that day-long thing. But I will tell you that you have to meet the youth and the parents where they are. And you have to express why it matters. Confirmation matters because it's giving a young adult person the autonomy to say, I believe. I may not know why I believe. I feel something in my heart. I don't know why, though. I know songs. I know stories. I learned at Sunday school, David and Goliath and all these things. But why would I continue to learn throughout my life? Throughout my life, this is really the start of what we call lifelong learning.
Yeah.
If confirmation, maybe it's even the wrong term for it, because it really should be catapulting a young person towards self-study. Now, I just said that my niece did not do confirmation, yet she had brought up to me that she does devotions on her cell phone. Unprompted. I never gave her a pamphlet. I never said, download this app. I never did any of those things. And she hasn't gone through confirmation. But tell me how many kids who have gone through confirmation that do daily devotions on an app.
Yeah.
And pray and think about what God wants for them in their life. So I don't have any answers, but it's definitely important that the parent is a part of it, because they're showing that child that they think it's important. And if they show that they don't think it's important as a family, then it won't be. It won't be a priority.
Yeah.
It will only be a priority to like a church nerd who wants to know. And even then, and even if you're a church nerd, you can go on like TikTok or just read the Bible yourself or read other books about it. You don't need a confirmation class to push you toward that. You're naturally inquisitive. And so you're going to find out about these things on your own.
So then that calls into question the word community, right? Because then if it's just about the brain, I can study on my own. If it's just about devotions, I can do them on my own. I can pray on my own. I can read the Bible on my own. And then what we keep finding out is people keep saying, especially adults, I think, to me, well, I'll come to church sometimes, but, Pastor, really, I connect with nature. I connect on a golf course. I connect in my bed. I connect sleeping. One person said to me once, the greatest church service you've ever done was Christmas Eve that year we got snowed out. I was sitting at home with an old fashioned while you were singing me Christmas carols and telling me about the Christmas story. I said, that doesn't sound like a bad storyline. And yet I think there really was a story there where they connected, not just to the ease of it, but also they were at peace with themselves. Yet at the same time, how do I then urge say, hey, great story, but also I need you in the space, not just for you, but for us. It's the whole, there's no I in team. When we look at that community aspect, the importance of it is, for me, I want to see all of us together. I know that my kids, and I think I live in a space where my kids are in a pretty solid middle-ish class outlook. I know that their personhood feels pretty safe right now. The question I have is, I don't know what their future is. And when the world starts getting rough, for whatever reason, whether it's because you're watching the news and you're nervous because it feels like the things you care about are under attack, or the things, that you don't care about, are being professed in a way that just kind of annoy you. Whatever that may be, whether it's like something's happened in your family or somebody suddenly died, and it could be a family member, but it could even be a classmate or something like that. All these life struggles, or maybe you just have a big test and it's just, you've got your last bit of hope has just been kind of stricken from you. How do we then come into the conversation and say, this is what confirmation is for? I'm building a life raft. I'm building a toolkit with you that I don't think you're going to need. And I pray you never need. But I think you're going to need it, and it might be sooner than you think. So do the work. And then how do you sell it to parents to say, if we don't do this, this is just like the geography and the history and the science and the math. Right next to it is your faith walk. Yeah, I know what 2 + 2 is. I know how to do the tip at the restaurant. I know, that I don't put bleach in with the coloreds, things like that in the washing machine. All this stuff is like life. And you go right there. You get told bad news, you get the breakup, and you get the bad grade on the test, and you find out your parents are getting divorced at the same day and the same week. How do you handle all that? Well, you drop down and you watch your favorite show and you eat a pint of ice cream. Yeah, that's one way to physically handle it. But the other side of it is that, where's God in that? And I think what happens a lot of times, we're meeting kids, we're meeting adults who are saying, that's when God leaves. And I think when you're the church nerd or somebody who's gone through confirmation and has kind of been brought into this community, my response is actually, that's when God shows up the most. That's when the God is most visible for me, is in the hardship. And so I think like that purpose of confirmation for me has been pulling into community, 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 community. But even then, the hardest part is community requires time. And they're saying, well, I got community in hockey, and if I don't show up, I don't play. And I community in the school play, and if I don't show up, I'm going to get kicked out of the cast. And I've got community with my friends, and if I'm not hanging out with them, I'm going to become the one they talk about when I'm not around. And my mom said, I don't have to go this week because we have a family function. And I don't have to go next month because I have that sporting event and the next month. And all of a sudden it's like, if we can fit it in, our kids will be there, of course. But the list of what can get you out of confirmation went from a death in the family to like, yeah, you said Tuesday next week? Oh, I thought it was Tuesday in 2 weeks. Sorry, we will not be there. And what happens when your community is that like frivolous and fragile?
I'm thinking about all of this. I mean, I will say, I feel like in congregations where I've seen not only confirmation, right, but youth and family ministry where it really thrives is at the same time they're doing those things, there's awesome adult faith formation that is happening also, right? That it's not only about, and I think maybe that's where we get caught. You know, we put so much emphasis on we have to have Sunday school in this like historic way. We have to have confirmation that meets every week for, 2 or 3 years, right? All these things, right? And yet we offer nothing for the adults. Or if we do, it's very limited, right? There aren't numerous pathways to kind of get onto that train, depending on, kind of where you're at, right? Because not everybody comes as an adult and like wanting to do like really intensive stuff. Maybe they need an entryway that's more like a book discussion or, something a little more low key. But I feel like, gosh, it's just essential. I mean, so one of the things I've been wondering about is, right, like we had a very committed listener who asked us about, well, what are the different ways that we could do confirmation, right? If we haven't had a pastor for 3 years and, right, like there isn't stability in that way in a system. But, one of the things that parts of the ministry that we did that was so effective was milestones. Right. And, I wonder, what would confirmation look like if it was, a 3-week stint here and parents and kids came together, and then a 3-week stint in a couple months and you do like the next section, right? And maybe that becomes the foundation of doing these small little snippets. Because I'll tell you, I did 3rd grade Bibles for years. And it was a 3-week course. The students came and, and sometimes there'd be younger and older kids, right? It was targeted for 3rd grade. And they would come with parent or grandparent. And there were always, every single time, you guys, adults who were like, I didn't know any of this about the Bible. Right. I mean, like, right, like the first 5 books of the Bible are the Pentateuch, and right, like, what does that mean? And these next section of books are that, like just the basics of that. Had no idea, and they were learning alongside their kid. Yeah. And like, to me, that's confirmation, right? How are we introducing spiritual practice of prayer and showing them there's all these different ways that you can engage in prayer? How are we teaching them to talk about their faith, right? To really have the language and tools, because, there's no shortage of, right, like devotions and things you can download and buy and get the next day on Amazon or whatever it might be. Right. But what's the theology? What kind of Christianity are they getting? What's the messaging about God, and there's a lot of it that I don't want my kids exposed to, right? I mean, I don't want competing theologies that are hateful to groups of people that, anyways, the list goes on. I'm sure you can fill in the blank, but
No, I think that's a good point because as we get into this, then, somebody shows up and says, I read a great book, and you're like, oh, what book? And then they name it and you go, oh, that book. Well, and your voice gets higher and higher. And then how do you validate you're doing the work? You're doing Left Behind. Okay. Can we talk about it? And would you be comfortable bringing it to a greater conversation? Let's talk about the Left Behind books. If it's to see a good movie, if it's to read a book and have yourself a nice little time reading about some stuff, great. If it's your new take on the end of the world, if it's your new take on this is where God is, it becomes tricky because there's some stuff that comes out and then you learn about the writers and it's like I just read a book where they got mentioned a few times, the Lehane guys. And it's like some of the stuff that they're attached to is different than like how I would want to live in the world. And so then I'm left going, I don't want anyone to support that book personally, but also if it gets us to the conversation we need to have, that I'm actually worried about the end times. Pastor Alex, I'm a little nervous. What is heaven and what is hell? Great. Let's talk about it. So it's like, you have to almost like let them journey. And also that permission to journey is so important. But they have to know they can come back, and they have to know they can come back with doubts and even I don't cares and I'm not gonna. And I think that's part of it too. And for that, for the person who kind of asked that question about like what happens in the gaps, right? Pastor disappears. We stopped doing confirmation. COVID, we stopped doing confirmation. Like now we got a bunch of high schoolers. What are you going to do? We did a 1 year, get them all, send them out. And then it left us with a sense of we don't have any confirmants. And now the next confirmants, like it's a 3-year program. They're like, it's not a 3-year program. You're saying it's a 3-year program now for my kid. And now I'm confused why. And it's like, we're trying to build something and maybe we can get some interconnectedness. But I think that parent stuff's huge. I think that's going to be a little bit of the future. Veronica, I want to give you a chance to respond as well. I know you've got a different, view on some of the stuff, and you see it also in the education world, I think, around being library where you go, probably library is one of the most underutilized, opportunities in any community, if you have one near or far, to say you can use the library for a million things. And people are like, I think it's just a place with books that I don't need to read. And it's like, actually, it's a space of community that's already at your fingertips, which I would argue the church is the same thing.
I agree. There's a lot of crossover between the two. I think that for parents, we as youth leaders, as faith leaders, have to figure out new ways to get them on board, to revive in them a faith. Before we were talking about the book, The Anxious Generation, a lot of y'all out there are reading that book in book clubs and talking about it. I think to truly reach the young people, we do have to show the parents why our beliefs, our way of life, Christ's journey, his death, his resurrection, it matters. And we wouldn't be doing this if it didn't bring on a life-changing knowledge that you can't get anywhere else. It's very aspirational and dreamy and sing-songy, but that's the only way we're going to reach is through community. That's the only way.
Yeah.
You could have a church with 50 people or 5,000 people. But the only way you're really going to reach somebody to their heart and soul is through community. In my community right now, on May 31st, we're throwing Miss Queen her 95th birthday party. And the church is also 95. My church also turned 95. I'm like, oh, they birthed the church, the St. Peter's and Miss Queen the same year. But
oh, I love it.
So, but the thing is that you look at Miss Queen, the oldest member of the church, And then you look at a little baby and the youngest member of the church.
Yeah.
But that baby knows Miss Queen. She makes it her business to know every person, whether it's their first time in church or they've been there for years. And she's not afraid to walk up and talk to you. And if you talk to a lot of people in that church, they came in and they were just kind of nervous. And they said, Miss Queen started talking to me. And that's why I came back. So I love to hear for confirmands to have the faith partner to journey with them along this learn. And even if it isn't tied to a class, 6 months, 1 year, 3 year, if that's just their faith partner, to walk through with them through high school or something, I think that would be very powerful. And to know that they have someone praying for them and thinking about them and checking on them. That's one of the key ways that we can have the kids care even beyond what they parents would imagine. You would have kids asking to go to church. So as far as confirmation, the formal practice of teaching our faith, and other faiths do it. They do it in Islam, they do it in Judaism. All the different faiths have to teach young people why they believe what they believe and to be able to carry it on into the future. And I'm sick of seeing churches having holy closures. I'm sick of it. When there are enough people to keep these churches going, it just breaks my heart. I'm like, what's holy about this? But
it's holy, right? It's
like
holy.
Every other week.
Every death brings new life or something. Just sucks when it's your death,
Yeah. But I think that a lot of it has to do with the new generations. They're not coming back to the church when they go away to college or whatever. They might come back to the neighborhood. They're just not coming back to church. Yeah. So there are a lot of studies that talk about that. But what can we do right now where we are with what we have? I think that would be a good conversation to have as well.
Yeah.
Just what do we do?
Well, and I think, as we kind of wrap up, the biggest thing, especially I think we all have had a couple rounds now where we've seen confirmation, we've seen our family members go through it. We've gone through it, and we've led it, taught it, all those different aspects. If you're that person in year one that's listening to this going like, so you're saying I'm going to fail. I'm like, yeah, maybe. But more than that, just know that there is no kind of one and done. The 3 year, the 2 year, the 1 day, the 16 year, all the programs have some kind of ability to connect them to you, and you hopefully are connecting them to the congregation. I think that's the piece that you have to lean into. And whether it's frivolous fun and holy goodness, we're covered in paint and soap and whatnot, or we sat and we read our Bibles, I believe there's something good coming out of it. And I think you just got to trust yourself a little bit. But I also think you need to ask those tough questions. Are we having fun? You called it lame earlier, Jess. Why not ask that question? Are we having fun, and could we make it fun? And the quick answer from a lot of students will be no. I just want to go home. I just want my phone. But also keep trying new different ways and fail big, right? Sin boldly. Take a stab at it that maybe they haven't tried before. Go off campus, stay on campus. Sit in the dark, sit in the sun. I don't know the answers, but I think for us right now, the push for me would be innovative, not in the sense that you're going to be the coolest and craziest, but try the thing. If it popped in your mind, it's because you had a feeling, I want you to trust the feeling and all the fail that might be attached to it, because that might be your last failure before your big success. Yeah. And so I think that's my hope for all of us as we do confirmation, is as we go to the drawing board. I know we've got a lot of stuff to talk about up here because we do a joint group confirmation with our whole entire like Synod conference. And there's a lot of feelings, a lot of who's not pulling their weight and how come we did it this way. And you didn't prepare the way I would have liked you to. And you're too heavy and you're too light and all the other things. And the biggest thing that I've got to remind myself when I come to that conversation is, and we're going to keep trying, right? Versus stop scrapping stuff and stop giving up. So whether you're doing it 80th version, if you're Miss Queen, happy birthday, baby, or you are in that first year going, confirmation, oh, what do I do? Just know you are part of a great lineage of successes and failures. And I just hope you know that's actually probably the best part of it is the gosh darn journey. So, you want to tell us what we should be thinking about as we're going from here?
Sure. Thank you. Before we go, here are a few quick announcements and reminders. A reminder that as a Network Plus member, you have access to Martin's List. Martin's List is a resource sharing website. Right now, it has 500 different resources that have all been created by children, youth, and family volunteers and professionals working in congregations just like yours. Oh, some confirmation stuff. If you're looking for a retreat curriculum or a Bible study or an activity for the season of Pentecost, which in May we're in, or research sources like this, go to martinslist.com, log in, and do a search. You're going to have to adapt it for your own context, but that's the case for everything. And if you write or create something, be sure to share it on Martin's List as well. Others can benefit from the work you've done. Thanks. And if you're a fan of podcasts, Faith Listens is a new podcast that's fresh out of the gate. It's from the network's Formation Co-op. It's a limited series, and it's talking about the different things that the co-op is learning as it works with congregations on a new framework for ministry with young people. Search for Faith Listens wherever you get your podcasts, or go to elcaymnet.org/Faith Listens.
Umnet.
Thanks to all of you who are members of the network. Your membership makes things like Third Tuesday Conversation, Oasis Connect Journal, and Formation Co-op, and Martin's List, and Extravaganza, and much more possible. If you're not a member of the network, we encourage you to join. Our memberships are what makes all of this possible. We're grateful to be in a community that cares for this ministry. Thanks so much for listening. New podcasts will be released on the third Tuesday of every month. Be sure to like and subscribe so you receive them as they come out, and share with your friends. And finally, thanks to Paul Amlin, the 3TC producer, for his great work. Have a great week, and look for our next episode being released on the third Tuesday next month and every month. This is Veronica Brito signing off, and who's all with me on here?
See you later. This is Alex.
We'll catch you next time. This is Jessica.